Welcome you all to Zoran Todorovic Interconnected and TNM Coaching Unplugged podcast. I'm so grateful and happy to have you all again with us, listening week after week, commenting, learning, growing. The last week podcast with Esther that was really sensational in a way that we learn about the multidimensional self. And she mentioned as well that our ability to heal ourselves, our ability to become a healer of our own life, it's super important. We didn't cover that topic, and this podcast is continuation of that because my guest is absolutely outstanding. She is a close and dear friend and somebody that I really look up to. She's a mother of three. She's an explorer. She's a spiritual teacher. She's a seeker. She has also created Kalo, which has been a beautiful company born out of the passion and her personal quest for health, meaning, and inner peace. Natalie Munk has also understood through her own hardships that holistic healing is way forward. She has been struggling with many things in her life, and then at one point in time, she has decided that the health actually comes from inside out and requires physical, mental, spiritual, and emotional well-being. She also understood that a lot of the people, when they get stuck with, especially with the health issues, with well-being issues, they often go to the standard Western medicine and they seek for the solutions and answers. But not all the time those modalities give us solutions. You know, they can help us, they can guide us, they can also help us restore and heal. But there is an aspect of us that we call holistic wholeness, when we include other modalities to be able to treat the entire person, the whole person, instead just the aspect of our challenge that we're facing right now. So I'm super grateful to have Natalie today. Natalie, welcome to this podcast.
Thank you, gorgeous. I'm very honored to be on your podcast. As you know, I also love all the work that you do and everything that you are sharing with the world and your being and your presence. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and you know, this topic of becoming your own healer and health in general is so prominent in our lives right now, you know, especially after the COVID crisis. Even before, you know, it was something that it was so important for all of us. But nowadays, I feel it's up in the air. It's in front of us. You know, it's so potent, the field. And you're the one who is really holding the flag and saying to everybody, we need to attain this conscious understanding that we are all can become our own healer. So tell us a little bit more about that. When you say we can all become our own healer, what do you mean? How do you perceive that? What is your take on this? And let's dive into this conversation.
Thank you. Well, I think the biggest thing is to start with where we're at right now. We have a society that is very disempowered, because we feel that we've got the only way we're going to get answers is by going to the doctor, is by getting medication. And we're so trained and used to very quick fixes. So we think that we just take a pill and that's going to be the answer to everything. And so it's very hard to get away from that. But it's also because we have lost in touch with our innate intuition, our innate knowingness. And so it's so vital that you actually can't heal properly. The doctors can only do so much. And even the healers, even the spiritual guides, whatever, the shamans, the whole thing, they can only do so much, because in the end, everyone is so individualistic and everyone's so unique that the only person who knows themselves well enough is themselves. And so you have to, the most important thing is to take a deep dive and actually figuring out, who the hell are you? What are you? What makes you tick? It's so, healing is it really is a 360 degree. We are a very complicated species, the most complicated species on the planet. And so when it comes to healing and you have to look at all aspects. You can't just look at what's the one little problem that's happening. You got to dig a lot deeper. So I'm fascinated and absolutely love looking at the whole piece and being able to help people understand that they also have the power and the agency to make change for themselves. And that's actually where I think the biggest shift is when they realize, when you go to the medical system and they only have a really short amount of time with you to be able to assess what your problem is. So let's say 15 minutes, right? The NHS is totally squeezed. They got 15 minutes to analyze you, figure out what you are, come up with a prognosis, because you have to walk out with what you've got, because that'll make you feel better. That's part of the placebo effect. Then on top of it, they got to give you something for that. And so all of a sudden, but there are 5 million questions they haven't asked. How you doing? How are you emotionally doing? What's going on with your family? How is, what's going on work-wise? It's so much deeper than that. And so in the end, it's about your own personal quest, your own personal journey, about really figuring out who you are to dive deep and make sure that you become more aligned with your authentic self. That is the ultimate in a snapshot.
This is a really good opening. So in this quest and journey of creating Kayla and, working with yourself, what inspired you to give the focus and attention to the holistic healing? What is your journey, your story that brought you to this point?
Good question. So obviously I'm not a doctor or I'm not a medic, but I've lived through it. So I was really quickly, I'll just throw out a bunch of things, but I was a kid who struggled to speak, severely ADHD, and dyslexic, silenced, had a lot of shit happen when she was younger, even though I had the most beautiful family and I had the means, all that kind of stuff. I had a lot of challenges at the very beginning, and then whatever happened, I turned into an athlete. Thank God that saved me. But then I got super sick in my 20s, and at the age of I had my first operation, I think at 19. And since for the next 25 years, I've had 9 major operations. I have fully gone through the medical systems in both America and Canada and the UK, and I've learned so much about the medical system, and I learned what was there and what was missing. And in that journey, I would get extremely sick. So the first place you go to the doctors and you go to the hospitals and the whole thing. But there were lots of aspects that I felt like they were missing. Like you turn into a number, you have to wear a coat, you're dealing with 16 different doctors. They're not talking to each other. They're not coordinating. No one is actually exchanging any details or information between you. And you feel really alone. And after the 4th year, 5th year, 6th year, 7th year, 8th year, it was a never ending story. Somewhere in it, I actually went to a naturopathic hospital, and I fully switched 100% naturopathic. And before that, I had been going, I would go to the natural, I would go to conventional medicine, and then I would go to alternative because I was so desperate, get better. But then I'd have a massive blowout again. I go back to conventional medicine, and then I go back into alternative. I get better. So it was this thing, but I wasn't believing in it totally. But when I went to the naturopathic hospital, all of a sudden I really adopted everything that they said, completely changed my lifestyle because it's a lifestyle change, and went totally natural. And the biggest shift that happened to me, I think I was tired of the process, and I realized that I had to stop becoming the patient and the victim, and I had to become the student. And I really had to take that on. I really had to start understanding, what the hell am I sick with? What is my illness? What is it doing to my body? What's happening from a scientific level? I really went to full on blood analysis. I need to understand what every single thing. And so I actually became I fell in love with science. I got totally into it. When I hated science at school, I wish I had a better science teacher, because science is the ultimate, is the bomb. And then on top of that, I was doing 5 million other different things also, because I kept on believing I guess I'm an optimist, and I always believed there was something more than just being sick. And I wasn't willing to just keep accepting it. So I kept on, I was pushing, I kept on seeking for there's got to be a better way. And so simultaneously, while I was dealing with the medical stuff, I started also changing my mind and how my mind was working and how I was then orbiting through life. And I think the conjunction of all these things, and all of a sudden I really realized it's the soul, it's the spirit, it's all these things have to become much more aligned. And then beautifully at the same time, so this was probably my last peak was probably around 2014, 2013, maybe 2012, 2013. I had, the Zach Bushes were coming out, the Gabor Mates were coming out, all these things were I was able to read things that just made so much sense to me. And so, yeah. And at the same time, while I was starting, I went natural. And I completely changed. Did do some plant medicine, which I think was probably one of the last things that really helped me with it. But I got so aligned. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, wait a second. We need everyone else to understand this. This is that's my goal, because once you're in your health and in your alignment of your full being, there's nothing that can topple me over. There's nothing anymore. Like I feel like I'm so strong and solid, and I just want everyone now to be able to have this access and this understanding so that they can obtain it themselves in a much quicker way than it took me, which was, 25 years, and with a lot less expenses, because I'm lucky. I had access to the top doctors, surgeons, like everyone. I had access. I don't know what people do who don't have access or time to have a nanny to be able to get this stuff. So the other thing that was happening while I got better, all of a sudden I really started scanning the world and the world around me and started realizing everyone was starting to get sick, and that more allergies were happening with our kids, more problems. ADHD was coming out much stronger. All these things were happening.
Autoimmune diseases, exactly.
Totally. But what was so amazing was by that time I had done my dissertation. I had done my personal live human dissertation, doctorate degree, because now by that point I fully understand what was going on. And so I think there was this real need of like, oh my gosh, we've got to help people. And it's actually an emergency. And then of course, COVID just amplified it.
Yeah. So just a little bit longer with your personal story, because I think it's super important for people to get inspired by the real and authentic stories, of your life. So what happened to get you from that moment of feeling a victim of the condition or the disease or whatever that was happening at that moment in time to, as you said, owning that you're not patient, but that you need to understand yourself on a deeper level and you need to become your own healer? Can you recall that moment? Because I think it's super important for people to experience this mindset and to be inspired by your story. What really happened?
So just to back up a little bit, probably in my 20s, before I got, just before I was getting sick, I'd had my first operation, the whole thing did it, but it was just before I was getting sick. And I arrived in LA. I didn't grow up in a spiritual family at all. So we didn't talk anything about spirituality at all. It was not that. And when I arrived in LA, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I discovered like my language, and it was so much fun. It was like, yay. And the whole thing, I didn't realize, I didn't even know if someone said to my mom, Nat is very spiritual. And my mom told me, and both the two of us were like, don't know what that means. Right. So just to put that aside, because that's my being of who I am. So then I hit LA and I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't eat enough of it. I mean, the astrology shops, is not just like I step in, I feel really comfortable. So then fast forward, I go through everything I've gone through, 3 kids, working, ill, just everything. And I'm now at this naturopathic hospital, and I pick up a beautiful writer who I used to read a long time ago when I was 20, who I absolutely love, and I would love one day to do some work with her. Her name is Carolyn Meese, and she wrote a book called, and I remember reading her, The Power of the Anatomy, or The Spirit of the Anatomy, many, many moons ago when I was like 19. But now I am reading, and it happened to be like the only book in the bookshelf of this place. And there was 3. And I picked it up and I was like, oh my gosh. And it was Sacred Contract. And it was a reminder of, oh my God, of course, I chose to come down here. I chose to go through this life. I chose all the people around me, even the perpetrators of this shit that happened to me and whatnot. I chose them to teach me. And it was just like the whole thing is like, okay, so for some reason, I've come down on this life to be super ill, to go through all these challenges super young for a reason. And I knew then, I think that I was going to be working in this area and going to come back and work in this area. And so all of a sudden, I just became methodical about it. And then I just became that scientist. And I was like, okay, let's stop everything else. Let's get serious here. And let's really dive into the science of it. And that was it. That was my trigger. And I love it.
Beautiful, because it's important for all of us to find it, because that moment of empowerment, when we all are giving our power away to the doctors, practitioners, therapists, people who we hope that will help us heal, it's a one dynamic. But when you take the full ownership that I am my own healer, I am in charge with my body, as you said at the beginning, I know myself much better than anybody else. It's a specific step that really empowers people to transform and heal in a very unique way. And I'm inviting the whole audience, especially if you're struggling with something, and we all are struggling with something right now. I don't know anybody in my life who is 100% healed. We all are restoring on a certain level. When you kick that moment of disempowerment, that you feel that you are not able to do this, it's important to find that moment when you can literally step into that new version of yourself that knows your body really well. And also, I love what you're sharing, Natalie, so far, that you've been scientific and also holistic, because I think science is so important for clarity or understanding of what's really going on with the physiology of the body. And then if you add on the holistic approach, how everything is interconnected, that there's not only one part, but everything works together, then you get the holistic approach of the healing. And I think this is where you're sitting right now so beautifully. Wow.
It's also been a really interesting dance, right? Because as you get deeper into it and I started yoga when I was 19, like everything sort of opened up in 19. So without a doubt, I was connected to nature. I'm a spiritual being. So that I feel very blessed for that, because that's helped me. And it's interesting because there's always been this sort of slight dichotomy with the scientific world and the spiritual world, because science hasn't been able until recently, and it's still to really be able to explain what goes on the sort of multidimensional world. And so there is this problem sometimes when you need everything to be scientifically based, but the science hasn't actually caught up to it yet. So great with quantum physics and all that kind of stuff. And thank you, Joe Dispenza, and like some of these amazing people who are out there who have been putting so much, brain, heart, mind, all these guys who have actually put tons of money into research and dedication to be able to really help people understand that this is not higgledy-piggledy stuff. This is the ultimate answer. Because I think the other thing with Carolyn Meese, like just to break it down, that moment, or having faith that we are part of a much bigger thing than just ourselves, is so important to know. Just to be able to, again, it helps you allow yourself to be able to know this isn't your fault, this isn't not all happening to you, to be able, again, whether you believe in it or not, it's a great belief system to help you get through it without maybe the doctrinization of any kind of religion or anything, but just as a great system to be able to help go, okay, so every experience is a lesson. Every experience is a challenge. Every experience is something for me to grow through. And it's that mindset which changes your whole entire life, because it means that life is filled, as you just said, filled with challenges. It is super difficult. As Dolores Cannon will say, when you decide to come down onto planet Earth, that is like the toughest decision you decide to come down to, because you basically come and you arrive in shit. And it's like, there's a reality to that. It's like, it's nonstop. It's like, everyone's surviving and we all have different issues that we're dealing with. But again, if you realize that that's actually where your growth comes from and where your biggest growth and your biggest insights, but you need to awaken the will and the what's it called? The warrior in you to be able to get through it, because to be able to because it's tough.
So how do we, I love that what you're sharing right now, awakening the will and awakening the warrior inside of you, taking responsibility, taking control over your health, making sure that there is a, deeper willingness, deeper passion. So how do you feel people awaken their will and that warrior energy? What is necessary? Is it crisis? Is it a long-term journey? Is it a pivotal experience? What is it that gets us to kind of say, okay, I'm awakening my will right now. I will step into my warrior self.
I mean, we all have our own places where we get our intelligence from. But from everything that I have learned and seen, because I am in the healing world, it's crisis. It's normally, it's midlife crises. It's a divorce, it's losing a child, it's all of these things and this is where I actually, what we call transitions, I think you probably call them the same thing. This is where I actually, when someone is going through something that's really difficult, there's a part of me that will come to them and be like, yay, because because this is a moment, it's now challenging you to really think about what you've been doing up to this date. Mm-hmm. And does this really fit with you? And does this really fit with your value system? Does this really fit with who you are? And is there anything that needs to shift and change so that you can walk on this path of life with more ease? Because that's all life is about, is trying to figure out, how do we walk through life with more ease, more peace, more flow? I don't know if that's too abstract.
No, it's very, very specific. We all look at that. We all are, but literally, we all are seeking to walk our life with more ease. And I guess when we get challenged like that, what you said just a second ago, that belief system that we adapt to, that everything is in our life is here to support us, to serve us, to guide us, to learn and evolve and transform, then this perspective shift really is prerequisite for us to heal and have the ownership of a deep, profound healing that we can exercise for ourselves, because that gets us out of the victim forever, right? Everything in our life is there to teach us, to grow us, and then you can't be in the space of, why is this happening to me? I'm such a good person, because sometimes that happens when we feel unwell. I've done everything well. I'm doing well. I'm trying really hard. I'm working really hard. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm doing. And then something else happened, and then we sink into the victim. And why is this happening to me if I'm such a good person, right?
And the other problem is why we have to get hit so hard is because we're stubborn beings. Like, we have spent all of these years sort of strengthening the patterns that we live. So we keep strengthening the same stupid patterns that are possibly not serving us anymore. So it's one of those things where it's like, we really need to. I remember when in like my 20s and I got super sick and I was told I needed to give up gluten and dairy. And I was like, honestly, fuck you. I'm sick. What am I going to do? Now I'm going to give up my cookies? Like, I'm like, I need something to make me happy. I'm like,
anything.
Don't take that away from me. Like, but it's just like, so our being is so stubborn in our routine and way of thinking things. So you need to crack fundamentally, and on a really point where you've had enough to even think about trying to change your life. Otherwise, it's very hard, because we're talking about changing your life.
So the crises are there for the reason. I mean, we sometimes try to prevent them, to avoid them. We don't want to experience them. They get really painful because they're intense. But what you're saying is that the healing crisis or relationship crisis or work crisis is always there to emphasize this moment of transformation when we really have to engage, right?
Yeah. That the more you engage, the more you become self-aware. And everything in life is about self-awareness. So it's an opportunity to really understand what's triggering you, what's bringing you down, where are your blockages, what's not flowing. So if you start investigating those with a curious mindset and openness and with a lot of compassion, you need a lot of compassion and self-love, then you can start kind of going, okay, well, let's look at this. And then you need a lot of different kind of guides and different experience to help you, because boy, our intelligent protective system has hidden it all very deep inside of us. So it's very hard to even figure out what's going on. You just, at the beginning, it's just like nothing works, but not supposed to live in that state. We're intelligent, phenomenal beings that this universe has made us. We're not supposed to be living in a low vibration. We're supposed to be living in an awesome high vibration. And the key to life is figure out, how do you get yourself to be in that high vibrational state for as much as possible? And how do you help yourself get yourself in that high vibrational state? Because once you're in that high vibration, you don't get sick. You know how to move forward clearly. You know how to make every decision more clearly. Things just become more clear and more aligned.
Yes, the high vibrational state is absolutely our natural state of being. And sometimes we do drop into the frequencies and we need to raise up once again to heal.
So we need help sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. This is the
always
question. So you're very telepathic. So along the way, it's important for us to open up for support and help of others, right? And you mentioned something really important before that, which was that in order for this to happen, we have to have self-love and compassion. And what I'm observing in myself and also in other people, when we get into the challenges with our own health, to create that compassion and unconditional love, sometimes it's not easy, because we tend to judge our bodies and we tend to be in argument with ourselves. Why you're not working? You're supposed to be working. You're a perfect machine. You're supposed to do this. You're supposed to have energy and joy and vitality, and you're not. So we get into that judgmental state. So that area of unconditional love and compassion, it's really, really important. And I think that other people, if you cannot do it for yourself, the healers, the guides, the teachers, the coaches can really help up that frequency so you can love yourself unconditionally, right?
They 100%, they need to help remind you. I mean, I think it's actually the number one toughest thing that people are struggling with, right? It's self-love. It's just, we just don't know it. It's so foreign to us. We don't accept it. It was never taught to us. And yet it is the number one most important thing in the end, because if you love yourself, then you can actually love everyone around you properly. And that's the key, because we are human. So we're all about human relationships. So if you have good relationships, you have a much easier, happier life. And you know that you can go to someone with vulnerability, instability, and know that you're going to be held. You can only do that when you do that for yourself, which goes to why, we always say that, in this world right now, it's cracking and changing. There's a lot of problems going on. There's some serious cracking that's going on. Thank God, because we need to, right? And, but one of the wildest things is we have to look after our kids, because our kids are beautiful, innocent beings who come onto this planet. They're good. It's the conditioning that fucks them up. And so what we have to do is we have to make sure that we don't, that's our job, is to make sure, try to not fuck them up. So we have to learn to parent in a different way. We have to learn to guide them, to hold them in a different way. And so in order to do that, you have to do your own work. You don't have the wisdom to do it without it. But going back to what you were saying, because I think it's really, really important. This is not something that one can do by themselves. This is why we have wisdom around. This is why we have elders. This is why we have teachers. This is why we have mentors. I think there is nothing better than inspiring teachers in any field you're in. Like, to inspire you, and two, to pass down the knowledge and the wisdom. So it's the same with living life. And there is a matrix out there that really exists to help people. And I think, Zoran, you and I really understand that. And so people who understand that means we can help people to find peace in themselves, to find peace in the process. And so they can have the peace to walk through it and to work through it and to get through it.
And to get to that ultimate state with the heading towards, which is you becoming your own healer through self-love, to understanding yourself, to taking full responsibility, through exercising compassion, and then being open for support and guidance. Because once again, I think it's super important at this stage of evolution for us to become reference points to each other and support and guide and love oneself. So with that, we're shifting into Kalo, because the Kalo, as a platform, was born from that vision that you will facilitate that connection between practitioners and healers and therapists and holistic practitioners to offer support, guidance, and help to other people. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, just your passion for it and what it represents to you and the world?
So Kalo has been a journey, like everything, but it is, it's really a tool, a place where people know that they can go to, where they've got vetted, amazing practitioners, amazing. I mean, that's the biggest thing that everyone says to us, is like, they're so blown away by the practitioners. They've got amazing vetted practitioners, and they've got this whole modality of different experiences that they can experience. And the idea is, and we're still a startup, so we have a long way to go. We have a very, very strong vision for where we want to go. But you start with a pain point, and we help you and we guide you through a very curated approach, going through the Kalo method, where we are taking you on a journey where we first help you with your mind, because that's the first thing you got to understand. That's like, so for example, in the medical system, that's the other thing. They don't actually educate you. They just tell you. But in order to be your own master, you need to be educated. You need to know what's going on. So then you have the discernment to be able to figure out internally, is this good for me or is this not good for me? So we have created a system where we are, and we have the most I'm so excited. And we're also talking to some amazing partners I'm so excited about bringing in. And we've got Gabor Mate coming. And we've just got all these beautiful, who I think are total thought leaders. And so you go through a journey, And we take you literally all the way down. At the beginning, the first course is like an intro course to what it is that you're dealing with. But then you'll be able to go deeper and deeper and deeper so that you can expand. And the whole purpose is to open your hearts and expand your minds, because that's what life is about. And then in that, build the coherency so that everything is starting to flow properly and you're getting rid of blockages in your system. So that's it in a nutshell. But we'll be a whole in the end, we are helping you to take control of your own health, but then we'll be an ecosystem for helping people to change their lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle change. When you start realizing that, let's say, for example, the majority of almost everyone on this planet right now is living completely out of balance with themselves, right? We're living in the hardcore masculine. We're living in stress, in constant stress. Our bodies are not supposed to be in constant stress at all, right? We need to start being able to drop and to relax and feel safe in our being. Okay, so that's where I say that's the more feminine side, right? So we need to bring this into balance. Once you have that balance inside of your system and you realize how connected you are to nature, so I call it the climate change within. Once you balance the climate change within, we will be the number one biggest advocates for the climate change on the outside world. The climate change on the outside world is just a reflection of what's happening internally to us, right? So we need to shift if you do it, so that's what we need to do. So that's what we're going to be helping people to understand, but also give them tools, give them experiences, give them resources, and give them everything. And our biggest job is to help democratize it, because I was very, very lucky. I had the means, as I said before. It took all this time, and I'm trying to fast track it for people. It's like, okay, let's come on, let's do this quicker. We're intelligent human beings. If people want it, people are dying for help. And so here we go. Here's a very quick, efficient delivery system. Everything's going to be on demand soon. And you have these live circles. So you have the community aspect. And what's interesting about the community aspect is that it's really important, because we actually heal more in groups than we do individually. So the circles are a really beautiful component, and you get to sit with the practitioners or the main doctors who would normally be $250 for one appointment. Here you go at it for either part of your subscription or it's £10 or whatever it is, but it's totally accessible, and you can ask all your questions and you're going to get them answered, and everyone else is going to learn from each other. And so it's a beautiful system.
And also I love that you highlighted that us being in groups and the coherence of the group really heals you. And I think Joe Dispenza really proved that scientifically when throughout the workshops, when you create this highest level of coherence of everybody, then the collective activates, and then we are able to support one another like a cells for getting into the high frequency and heal each other. So I think the element of community and not being alone in your challenge or inside of your transformation, I think is super important, because when we're alone, then we tend to disassociate and tend to leave, and isolate. I think it's super important, the community aspect of it as well.
It's really important. And also when you're alone, everything gets so much scarier, right? You feel like you're the only one on the planet who's going through it. All of a sudden you stop, you lose your energy, so you don't go out in the world to go and get help. You don't know where to go. Everything starts getting foggy. And the other thing is, which I love, is when you participate and you've had your own experience. If you've had your own experience, you also can help teach someone else.
Exactly.
You realize that you're not just there as no, you have wisdom to give too. So it's a beautiful system. So yeah.
Of the community that really supports and love each other, because I think the essential part of healing is sharing, but it's also teaching others about your own experience. And by that, you get empowered because you have managed to overcome certain parts, like you were sharing at the beginning through your life journey. You overcame this and this and that, and it becomes really empowering for us, because if you can do it, I know I can do it as well.
100%.
We can talk about this forever, but we're coming closer to the wrap up of this podcast. So anything that you feel at this moment in time, Natalie, it's important for the audience to know, anything that you would love to leave the audience with when it comes to what do you want the key message or key signature to be at this moment in time in 2023, going to 2024, something that you feel, okay, guys, you need to pay attention to this, you need to listen to this, you need to take this into consideration. So whatever comes, please share.
I think the the fact that right now, I think a lot of things are shaking and a lot of things are breaking. And I think, so there's a lot of fear. COVID created a lot of fear. And I also see that people are getting sick. And all I can say is, please, like, look at this as an opportunity to really start seeing, instead of just following everyone and doing what you're being told, really figure out who you are and what you want in life. And so take a moment to like actually stop and think, get help, and get whatever kind of help that is that you want at this moment. Give yourself a huge amount of compassion and love. And that's a practice, by the way. Like, it's a practice of like every second. Like, if you hear a negative voice coming in, no, like, piss off. That's like, whatever. I don't want to give. No, I am me and I'm trying to be the best person I can be. So like, let's give me a break, and I am where I am and I'm going to keep learning. And to know that we have a lot more agency than we think we do, to know that we are able to make, like, so I always say, we make decisions every second. So the choice, make every single decision a choice that fills your soul, that feels good to you, that makes you feel good, and lean away from the stuff that does not make you feel good. And if you have to, start writing it down, charting and going, oh my God, I love this, because some people are not even connected to like what makes them, they're so like in the rat race of having to just do. I would say pause, just stop for a sec, start writing out, and then go get the amazing tools and go look and be curious, have an open mind, and know that this is an adventure towards self-awareness, which is towards your awakening, which allows you, eventually you'll be like, you're working towards your own alignment with yourself. That's it. And you have the power to do so.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love that you're putting it in the context of adventure, self-awakening, alignment, learning, so that we permanently have this ownership. Thank you so much. Now I understand why my grandmother always told me that your health is the most important. I remember when I was in my 20s and she was saying your health is most important. I was like, what is she talking about? I'm healthy and vibrant. But it is true. Our health, our well-being is the most important aspect of our human presence, because when we have health and we have well-being, then we can self-actualize, express our purpose, function in society, be an active member, be a good father, mother. If that is destroyed or damaged, then we cannot fully be ourselves. So I think this is the most important thing for right now. And I think we all need to give it the focus. We need to give it the attention and collectively rise up into the space when we eradicate the disease and eradicate illnesses and tap in what Natalie is talking when she's saying high vibration, higher frequency, when we are naturally supposed to dwell and really not experience other things that are pulling us down. So take this into the advice, take this into this consideration. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. I'm going to reference all the Natalie social media as well, Kayla Life website. As Natalie said, it's a startup. Very soon the digital content will come up. You can engage with the team, and Kayla, they're really lovely to support you and guide you and support that mission, and also share, because the healthier will become, the better for everybody. We have collective human consciousness and we need to love and support each other. So Natalie, thank you so much for being part of this podcast today. We're really grateful to have you. All the blessings and good energy to you, and for everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in, and we cannot wait to see you on our next podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you, Zoran. Thank you.